Oh, hey Dylan. I hear you're a big movie buff. Could you give me some personal recommendations from your top movies this year, perhaps? I'm looking for something to watch this weekend. Oh yeah, I have. I saw this really good movie. It's about this cowardly knight who has to decapitate a tree man and then go on this long journey to redeem himself. Really good stuff. That sounds a bit too out there for my taste. Give me another one. Oh, well, I saw this movie. It's about this lamb human baby hybrid, and it's got a lamb head and these little baby human hands, and it walks around the house wearing sweaters, and this Iceland couple just treats it like a normal baby. Really cool stuff. Do you like any normal movies? Okay. There's this movie about this rich space family, and they go to this giant planet of sand to control all the spice in the galaxy, and then they also have to fight these giant space worms, and then basically fight a war over this special hypnotic spice. Space worms? Oh, okay, just never mind.
Hey Debbie, do you have any movie recommendations for this weekend? I need something good.
Oh my god, I loved Cruella. It was so good.
Thank you.
2021 was an interesting year for film because many thought it would either be the resurgence or the downfall of modern film after the pandemic began and the 2020 year was such a bad year for film. But realistically, it was more somewhere in the middle, I suppose. But I will say that this year was a much better year for film than last year. And without further ado, this is my top 10 movies of the year for 2021. I'm just going to be briefly talking about each of these movies and why I feel they belong in my list. A few missed movies that aren't appearing on this list that I am hearing a lot of buzz about. There's Titan, Red Rocket, and Tragedy of Macbeth, the later of which I'm actually seeing this weekend. At number 10, I have The Suicide Squad.
Is this thing a dog?
A dog? What kind of dog do you think it is, mate?
I'm gonna go with Afghan Hound.
Oh my god, is it a werewolf?
Yo, they turned me into a werewolf? Yo, let me out!
Hey, he's not a werewolf, okay? He's a weasel. He's harmless. I mean, he's not harmless. He's killed 27 children, but, you know.
Man, The Suicide Squad is easily the movie that not only DC needed this year, but the movie people in 2021 kind of needed themselves. Directed by James Gunn, The Suicide Squad, or just easily referred to as Suicide Squad 2, leads as the funniest movie this year by a long shot. Filled with terrific action and Gunn's super witty, sharp, dark humor, I loved this movie's dimensions more than the 2016 Suicide Squad. I even liked it more than both of Gunn's Guardian of the Galaxy's movies. My only concern is this movie didn't do too hot at the box office, and I'm really wanting to see him continue his work with DC, so here's hoping we'll get more DC and James Gunn projects. At number 9, we have Val.
Hi, my name's Val. I don't do this with every interview I go on. Take you inside my home. I don't, but I'm going to.
My name is Val Kilmer. I'm an actor.
Val was probably the biggest surprise for me this year, solely based on the fact I didn't really have any interest about Val Kilmer going into this movie. The only movies of his that I've seen are Top Gun and Batman Forever, two movies I don't really care a ton about. But Val provides a deep, thoughtful insight into his life. Of a troubled actor, through home videos, Val Kilmer has been using a camcorder to film most of his life, and we are now seeing these videos compiled with reflections on each time of his life, and we actually get to hear his son narrate over it since he's having some issues with his voice due to throat cancer. You can really see him reflect on points of struggle in his life, such as his brother passing or the hatred of fame that playing Batman brought him, and how he's behaving in the archive footage kind of reflects on how he's feeling at these moments. We rarely have an opportunity to dive into the mind and see a point of view of an artist like this, and it made me really care a ton about Val Kilmer off of this alone, and it makes me want to go and watch his old movies and see what he could possibly do in the future. At number 8, we have Last Night in Soho.
Last night, I saw something in my dreams.
By this point, an Edgar Wright movie will almost always make my top movie of the year list. The only question is really where. Edgar Wright's latest film is a psychological thriller murder mystery, which is a bit departure for his normal fantasy movies. However, when watching this, you will immediately recognize it as an Edgar Wright with his masterful cinematography and trademark film style. The movie is a much-needed love letter, yet somehow warning sign for the 1960s nightlife. The movie feels very much made for younger generations that like to glorify that time period without recognizing the problems of those times. This movie also has my favorite actress performances this year, with Anya Taylor-Joy and Thomasin McKenzie literally reflecting off of each other on the screen with just terrific performances on both of their ends. At number 7, I have The Green Knight.
Do not waste this.
Every year, there is at least one of those movies that I love talking about and recommending to people, but I always have that huge asterisk mark with it, always saying, this movie is definitely not for everyone. And that happens to be the case with The Green Knight this year. The Green Knight is an epic fantasy adventure following the path of a cowardly knight and the journey he must make for a possible redemption due to a deal he made. First and foremost, this movie is very weird, very confusing, extremely metaphorical and symbolic, but I think some movies can use that to full effect, and The Green Knight definitely does. Not everything needs to be clear and precise in some films. I don't always want answers for everything because it can then be fun to talk about things and speculate with peers later on. The closest thing I can compare this movie to is it reminds me a lot of reading the Canterbury Tales in high school English class. And you could have honestly convinced me that this was a part of that book if I hadn't read it. If you're looking for something visually beautiful and narratively interpretive, you should definitely give this a watch. At number 6, we have Come On, Come On.
You'll have to be born as a human child. At first, you'll have to learn to use your new body, to move your arms and legs. You will learn to walk and run, to use your hands, to make sounds and form words. There will be so much for you to learn and so much for you to feel. Sadness, joy, disappointment, and wonder.
Probably the most unknown movie on my list this year, Come On, Come On is a new indie movie drama starring Joaquin Phoenix. For some people, that's all you need to know that this movie is great. However, this movie follows an uncle and a nephew, both having to connect due to family circumstances, while both helping each other out through very rough phases in life. We're so used to seeing a young coming-of-age story where a wise, all-knowing adult can come in and help a child with their problems, but this film is so refreshing to see a humanistic adult figure who is also struggling and has their own problems, also needing help of his own. Joaquin and child actor Woody Norman work so well together in this, and they deliver one of the most powerful dramas this year. The two characters' bond is just so strong in this, and how they each uniquely help each other with their own problems and reaching to go outside of with an adult trying to understand a child's problems and a child trying to understand what an adult is going through. It's just very powerful how these two are reaching to help each other through their own problems. Also, for those of you keeping up, this is the third and final A24 movie on my top 10 list this year. They dominate every year on my top 10 list. I love you, A24. Please keep making these great movies. At number 5, we have Dune.
Can I trust you with something? I've been having dreams about a girl falling in battle. Felt like a vision.
Dreams make good stories, but everything important happens when we're awake.
Dune was the first movie this year that made me really happy to be seeing a new blockbuster film in an IMAX theater. Dune is a mythical sci-fi movie based on the classic sci-fi novels by Frank Herbert. Dune is also directed by Denis Villeneuve, one of my favorite directors right now. We get to witness him adapt one of those stories that for many years was often said to be unadaptable. That's also due to how terribly made the previous David Lynch version was. However, this version of Dune is a masterpiece of political sci-fi storytelling, but more importantly, a visual and sound masterpiece. Similar to his other movies like Blade Runner 2049, Dune is filled to the brim with breathtaking atmospheric cinematography and very loud, bass-heavy sound mixing. I know it's out of theaters by this point, but if you did watch this, I really hope you saw this in a movie theater and did not watch this at home on HBO Max. This is easily the most theater-demanding film this year. At number 4, we have King Richard.
Raise your hand, Serena. Venus Williams.
What you think? Nobody's taking that bet. Tennis takes expert instruction. It takes families with unlimited financial resources. It's like asking somebody to believe that you got the next 2 Mozarts in your house.
Venus and Serena gonna shake up this world.
King Richard is a sports drama / biopic of Serena and Venus Williams, but primarily about their father, Richard Williams, played by Will Smith. The 2010 decade being rough for Will Smith as an actor is definitely an understatement.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
But it's so terrific to see a return to form from him with a power performance as Williams' girl's father. We have seen many athlete movies and several sport coach movies, but to follow a father's path to training his children while encountering social and financial struggles is so refreshing for a sports movie. I honestly didn't really care anything about tennis as a sport, but I was fully invested in this movie and Richard Williams' story. This is easily my favorite Will Smith performance of all time. This movie probably could have been higher on my list, honestly, but similar to some issues I have with the film Straight Outta Compton, the biopic's subject does seem to avoid some more controversial parts of their life and definitely plants them as a super clean person since the subject still is alive, but still overall this is a very terrific movie and I fully expect Will Smith to be leading Oscar nominations for Best Actor. At number 3, we have Spider-Man No Way Home.
You're flying out into the darkness to fight ghosts.
What do you mean?
They all die fighting Spider-Man. It's their fate. I'm sorry, kid.
Yeah, me too.
Don't.
Look, there has to be another way.
There isn't. They're a danger to our universe.
You're not gonna take this away from me.
So, by the point of recording this, even though it has been 2 weeks since release, I will not be talking about any spoilers or be mentioning anything that isn't shown in the trailers, but Spider-Man No Way Home definitely doesn't feel like just a new Spider-Man movie, but more of a celebration of the past 20 years of Spider-Man movies, bringing in elements for 3 different Spider-Man series and presenting it as a Spider-Man's Endgame is an absolute blast, and the only movie on this list that I rushed to go see again the next day right after viewing it. This movie is filled to the brim with fan service, movie quotes, and is basically a live-action game of Super Smash Brothers. Yeah! And in a lot of movies that would bother people and it would honestly probably ruin the experience. But honestly, none of that bothered me here because it was all handled so very well. Similar to the way The Force Awakens and not The Last Jedi, Sony Pictures is giving Spider-Man fans what they've been asking for in this movie, using familiar things yet somehow keeping it just fresh enough to be a great movie. Willem Dafoe also steals the show in this movie and just killed every single scene he was in, absolutely cementing himself as the greatest supervillain casting of all time, most likely.
This is maybe Prada. This is some sport thing.
I applaud Sony for giving Marvel fans the movie they had been asking for so long. And honestly, without trying to be cheesy here, I got to be a kid again when watching this movie. I can definitely understand if some don't like this just due to the amount of fan services in this. But myself, I personally loved this movie. I think it's really good and the best MCU Spider-Man movie by far. At number 2, we have Judas and the Black Messiah.
You're looking at 18 months for the stolen car, 5 years for impersonating a federal officer, or you can go home.
Judas and the Black Messiah is a historical drama about the betrayal of Black Panther chairman Fred Hampton by Bill O'Neill. Coming out less than a year after a massive rise in civil rights protests in the United States, this was honestly the most needed movie this year. Going into this, I honestly believed it would be more about Fred Hampton, but we see Hampton from the point of view as Bill O'Neill, aka the Judas figure in this movie. The movie provides a story of internal struggle of, do you betray your friends to save yourself, or do you give yourself to keep your friends safe? And it so masterfully illustrates that human complex, that often seen train cart motive that we've seen illustrated so many times. Lakeith Stanfield provides my favorite performance this year. Similar to his other movies, Stanfield can beautifully act as a person who has internal pain and conflict, all while needing to conceal those struggles from others. If you've seen his other movie, Sorry to Bother You, you have an exact idea of what I'm referring to. This movie is an absolutely heartbreaking tale, and I really suggest people watch it to learn more about Fred Hampton, his movement, and exactly what the FBI and Bill O'Neill did to him at that time. Alright, before number 1, I do have a few honorable mentions that I would like to talk about. First off, we have The Last Duel, Ridley Scott's latest medieval movie, guides through viewers through a horrific act from the point of view of 3 different characters, showing us the same story 3 different times and how some people will slightly twist small details in a story to their favor. Second, we have A Quiet Place Part 2. Similar to the first one, John Krasinski has provided us with another great horror movie follow-up, which is very rare for that genre of film. Last honorable mention we have is Lamb, easily the most freaky movie you can see this year. This movie is a slow burn film that follows this lamb-human hybrid creature, and I'm very fond of it just because it reminds me so much of Appalachian folklore that I grew up with. Alright, at number 1, my movie of the year is The French Dispatch.
It began as a holiday. Eager to escape a bright future on the Great Plains, Arthur Howitzer Jr. transformed the series of travelogue columns into The French Dispatch, a factual weekly report on the subjects of world politics, the arts, high and low, and diverse stories of human interest.
You don't think it's almost too seedy this time?
No, I don't.
For decent people.
It's supposed to be charming.
Wes Anderson movies are often viewed as too artsy or even pretentious for some moviegoers, and from a certain point of view, I can honestly understand that. But honestly, I completely fell in love with The French Dispatch. This is the most I've loved a movie since The Lighthouse back in 2019. The French Dispatch doesn't really have a main cohesive story, but follows a French newspaper outlet and provides 3 different stories that are going into the newspaper. You will follow one of the stories and see the newspaper reporter in the story gathering information, and then you'll later see the reflections about it while processing it for the newspaper. This movie flows like a stage play, but with no pauses and interruptions throughout. Sets move in and out with people naturally moving in such a beautiful way. The colors and how they mix into the cinematography is also perfectly done. This movie isn't here because of what the story it's telling, but just for how masterfully made of a film this is. I can imagine many future filmmakers studying this film. From beginning to end, it is engaging with witty dialogue from its star-studded cast in the best movie sets I have seen in a long time. If you love film as an art, I can't recommend this movie anymore. It's like a series of moving paintings, and you hear the small figures talking and learning the stories of how every single person got into that painting. There are so many reasons why The French Dispatch is just a beautiful masterpiece, and for all of these reasons, that is why it is my top movie of 2021. And that is my top 10 movies of the year. As an added bonus, the worst movie of 2021 is easily Cruella. By far the most boldly awful movie I have seen this year. I hated this movie from beginning to end, and I don't want to associate with people who thought this was actually a great movie. Alright, that is all I have for you today. I am Dr. Rorschach. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great year.